Hello! Welcome to Matrix Live Season 3, Episode 16. Today, I am joined by Eric.
Hello.
Eric, who are you? What do you do?
So I'm one of the back-end developers and mostly work on Synapse as well as a lot of the spec stuff. So you probably see me around in those sort of areas as well as more ops work and sometimes on the clients. But yeah.
And it's very fortuitous that it's Eric sat here, because today I want to talk about, I want to talk a bit about Synapse 1.0, but I want to talk about Home Server Federation API generally. And the thing I want to talk about is recently, hopefully everyone will have seen that we released the first ever stable release of the Federation API, R0. And we put out a release of Synapse to go alongside it, .99, which we describe as compatible. But it didn't totally enforce the spec, it was just compatible with it. And the reason why we couldn't just jump straight to it was of really 1.0 demands a break and change. And it demands a break and change to how you manage certificates on the Federation API. In the past, it was totally fine to use a self-signed certificate for your Federation API, and this is no longer the case. It must be a valid certificate. And as a result, we put out .99, which was kind of permissive either way. And we said to everyone, great, upgrade to .99 and make sure that the certificate on your Federation API is a valid one. And a whole bunch of people have gone ahead and done this. And I've actually got the number percentage-wise of servers that at least we can see. So we'll share that as a grand reveal at the end. But the fact that we're talking about it right now, it's not as high as we need it to be. And so that's really what we want to talk about. We want to try and explain why we're doing this, why this is necessary, and also, practically speaking, what server admins need to do. And to help me with that and describe it properly is Eric, because he knows all about this kind of stuff. So Eric, why don't we start at the beginning? Give us just a little bit of history of what's been going on, what were the goals of this R0 spec, why is it actually important that we, I mean, I know it's obvious, but let's spell it out. Why is it important that we even have a stable version of the server spec?
Yeah. So, I mean, it goes very much back to the goal of Matrix itself, and that's to create an interoperable open source and open standard. And you can't really have an open standard if you don't have a stable thing that people can build off of, a stable spec. And that's really what R0 is. It's us saying, actually, no, we now have all the basic features you need, and we've played around with this, and we have a really firm idea of what we need to do, and we've now done that, basically. So there's, it's not completely feature complete, but it's stable, and we know kind of how to extend it. We've now got room versions and API versions so that we can continue extending without having, hopefully, to do any more breaking changes, or at least very few breaking changes moving forwards.
And the idea is that somebody could just take the spec, implement that, and then would be able to federate. So they could, whatever language they want to write the home server in, whatever paradigm, they take the spec. As long as it's stable to that spec, then they ought to be able to federate.
Absolutely. Currently, there are some people trying to write servers, and what they find is that they have a tendency to need to look at the Synapse source code, and that is that is not right. We need to fix that, and that's what R0 is all about. Both really making sure that to standardize everything and also get it actually into the spec in a written form. So yeah, we have that spec, and you can just, without ever looking at Synapse, without ever trying anything, you should just be able to faithfully look at the spec, implement everything in the spec, and everything should be fine and work perfectly.
Tremendous! This sounds amazing. Okay, so it would be even more amazing if there wasn't a breaking change.
Yes, it would.
So tell us give us some of the history. What exactly are we doing here?
Yeah, so obviously when all these home servers are wanting to talk to each other over Federation, it's very, very important that that is all encrypted and all secure. You don't want to end up in a situation like email where you sort of just throw a few emails over the fence and hope the right person gets it. So back in, I think, 2014, when we're looking at this, obviously the obvious thing to do is to use TLS between the home servers and use certificates. Now, the problem back in 2014 is that to actually get a certificate cost quite a lot of money. So not too much, but certainly enough to make people think twice before setting up a home server. And it's just a bit of a faff. You don't have no automation. You have to go and sign up with one of the certificate repositories and all the rest of it. So that was we thought that was a bit sucky, and so we started looking around for other things we could do. And we discovered a project called Perspectives, which is actually a really neat and cool idea. And that's basically where, when you want to talk to a remote server, you go and connect to them, you get the certificate, and you go, okay, right, is this actually the server I want to talk to? And you go and ask a bunch of other servers that you already trust, what certificate they think the server you're originally trying to connect to has. And if everyone agrees, that's hunky-dory, because it's quite difficult to man in the middle the entire internet. It's quite easy to man in the middle of one person, but the entire internet is a much bigger deal. So that's you have this almost gossip-like network, and that's kind of really cool. So you get absolutely zero trust going on there, because you're talking to all sorts of different servers that are in different people's control. The problem with Perspective servers is that we've discovered that it's a bit faffy to set up. You need to be quite fault tolerant. People the internet breaks in all sorts of weird and wonderful ways. So half the time, different servers can't talk to the original server you're wanting to talk to. It's a bit slow, the logic's a bit complicated, and it's all just a bit of a faff. And what we found is that most people just rely talking on to matrix.org.
Right. So they use matrix.org as the kind of notary.
Yeah, exactly. Which sucks, because we don't want to be in the center of the federation. We desperately don't want to be there. Look, we don't want to know what's going on.
It's not our bag.
Yeah. We're trying to make a decentralized service, damn it. So this is something we've been really, really wanting to kind of fix for a while now. Back at the start, we thought this is a really cool idea. It's a really neat experiment. But as time sort of gone on, we've realized that actually, while it's a great idea and we could probably continue to try and really implement it, it's just not working out very well. And then one day, Let's Encrypt became a thing.
Right.
And that was incredibly shiny, and we were really excited about the first news about that, and that sort of made us think, hang on a second, the original reasons we wanted Perspective servers, that it's a faff to set up and that it requires upfront cost, no longer applies. If Let's Encrypt becomes successful and actually becomes a thing, we can just make people, rely on that, or rely on our certificates, or whatever, and hopefully more people will start giving out free certificates. And so we've been following along with Let's Encrypt from the very start, and we've been very, very happy that it's actually become incredibly popular, and we've seen that actually tons of websites are now getting HTTPS, being served over TLS, and that it wasn't the case back in 2014, really. Right. So it's incredibly exciting to see that actually almost the entire structure of the internet has become encrypted, which basically means that it's a lot easier for us to turn around and say, hang on, no, let's just rely on the normal TLS certificates and the normal, X509 lookups and things, and just trust everyone else that, they know what they're doing. So that's where we are. But that puts us in the position of, we've got this Perspective approach where everyone's using self-signed certificates, to wanting to go over to using actually properly valid certificates. And that's where a lot of this backwards incompatible change is coming into, and why we've been running around screaming about, hey, people won't need to have a valid cert before 1.0 goes out.
Right, yeah, and hey, look, we don't take this change lightly. This is invasive. But what we've done is try to spend a bunch of time explaining all the different scenarios that we think people will have their servers in, and trying to give some guidance on what you actually need to do. Because it might seem a bit intimidating, or it's just not clear what actually needs to have happen. And we hope that actually the steps you have to take are going to be quite straightforward. If only we could express that in a clear way. So, with that in mind, what should people do?
Hopefully, for the vast majority of people, it's actually quite simple. And that's just, hopefully you already have a TLS certificate. If you have a website, if you have a reverse proxy, either put Synapse behind the reverse proxy or just give Synapse the certificate. And hopefully that will cover the vast majority of people out there. If you don't already have that, if you don't have a website or anything like that, you can actually just ask Synapse to generate a certificate for you. It has Acme support built in, so you can just make it listen on port 80, and it will just do everything magically, and it will work.
So just for the folk, Acme, what's that about?
Acme is basically the open protocol that you use to talk to Let's Encrypt. So you turn on Acme, and Synapse will go and talk to Let's Encrypt, and Let's Encrypt will magically pull a lever and give you a certificate that you can use for that domain. All of this assumes that you're on the domain that your home server's name called. Okay. So every home server has a server name, like matrix.org, I'm jki.ire or whatever, or example.com. And the vast majority of people just run their server on a host that their DNS points to that. And that makes it very easy to just get a TLS certificate for. So yeah, hopefully just you either have a TLS certificate or it's very easy to generate one, either using Synapse or just going to Let's Encrypt and following the instructions.
Okay.
So that's kind of, hopefully you don't need to change anything other than TLS certificates. Now, where a lot of the complexity actually comes in is that there are quite a few ways to host Synapse. You can use SRE records to host it completely. Some are completely different. You can delegate your domain to make somebody else host Matrix for you. They're a lot less common, those use cases, but it just really adds to the complexity, and it means that our FAQ actually is a lot longer and looks a lot scarier than it is. So if you are hosting your home server on a different domain or a different host, like foo.example.com, if your home server is called example.com, what you'll have is an SRE record that just points from example.com to foo.example.com. In that case, all you really need to do is get a certificate for example.com and just give it to Synapse. It's certainly one option. The other option is just to have a reverse proxy on example.com, point the SRE record back at example.com, and just proxy from the reverse proxy to Synapse. And they're basically the two easiest ways of doing it. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the common use cases. But really, where this all starts to go quite complicated is when you don't actually have control of example.com, right, or you can't get a certificate for it. So the common thing here is if you're writing a hosting provider for Synapse or for Matrix home servers, and that's, or you've got someone else hosting it for you, and you really don't want to give your a full certificate for your domain over to a third party because that's bad. And so we've actually added a new mechanism to basically say, hey, I'm delegating my Matrix stuff for this domain over to those people. And the way you do that is with just putting a .wellknown little JSON blob under .wellknown/matrix/server, just saying, actually, please send all my traffic to that server over there. And this is very, very useful because you could say, hey, random hosting provider, please host my Matrix thing for you in a very similar way that you can do for email. And then all you need to do, stick your well-known JSON blob there, point it over to your hosting provider, wipe your hands and walk away. And the hosting provider will do everything for you. The way this actually works under the hood is Synapse will, or a home server even, will go and query the well-known whenever it tries to talk to us Matrix server. It will either get a delegation back or nothing. And then it will use whatever it got back as actually, no, I'm going to send all my traffic to that home server. So it is very much a delegation. And so when it goes to connect to that home server, it's actually using the TLS certificate for that delegated server. So if you're example.com and you're delegating to matrix.org or somewhere else, other servers will actually connect to matrix.org and expect a matrix.org certificate and not an example.com certificate. And the reason why that's all secure and safe is because when you originally look up the well-known certificate, well-known blob, it will be over HTTPS with the certificate for example.com. But that is very much kind of a niche use case
Yeah.
And hopefully not many people out there will be bitten by this. And if they are, then hopefully they can kind of just go through the FAQ and understand what's going on. And it's a little bit more complicated, but hopefully most people.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things we've noticed with folk just sort of asking for a bit of support, there seems to be perhaps some sort of misunderstanding across the community that, now we all need to implement .well-known support. And this really isn't the case. Very, very few server admins will need to do this. We're very happy to try and guide you through that, but if you're unsure, it's really pretty unlikely unless, as Eric says, if you're hosting on behalf of somebody else, maybe you're running a kind of hosting service on top of Matrix, then perhaps in that case what .well-known is what you need to do. But for almost everybody else across the federation, we don't expect .well-known to be the right solution for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you use .well-known, if you use .well-known, then it starts to add slightly more complexity because you have to have a certificate in a different name than your home server, and actually keeping all those in sync causes all sorts of issues if you get it wrong, and it can be a little bit complicated. So I would very much suggest if you can avoid using .well-known, just to do it to save your sanity a bit. I think part of it is that .well-known is such an important part of making sure that of changing over to requiring valid certificates, and we've been really talking inside the community about how we're going to actually support this use case of delegation. And I think people have sort of misunderstood and thought that we're moving away from serve to well-known, and actually that's not what we're doing. It's just an extra mechanism kind of just on the top, which you can completely ignore unless it really affects you.
Okay, so what should someone out there maybe watching this right now and they have not sorted out their TLS certificate, and they think, goodness, now is the time, or is it now the time? What should I be doing right now?
Right now, you should be going to matrix.org/federation tester, just making sure that returns everything green and everything is okay, and tell you. And if it returns everything green, you're hunky-dory, you don't need to do anything else. If it does,
by the way, we'll put that URL underneath what's it on the YouTube.
Yeah, hopefully you've seen it around, but we shall be shouting about that a lot more, that URL. So hopefully that will tell you everything's fine. If it doesn't, it's likely because you haven't set up the right TLS certificate. And then all you need to do is go to this FAQ, which again we'll post a link to, but it will also be in the Synapse README, and just follow the guidelines there. Broadly, you just need to find a valid certificate for your server name, either using the built-in Synapse ACME, using an existing certificate you have for your web server, and just give that to Synapse, or stick your Synapse behind your reverse proxy. You just really need to make sure, again, that the certificate that Synapse has and is behind is a valid one.
And I mean, in terms of timelines, how we've done this is we rolled out the .99 on the 5th of February, and we said, look, we're definitely not going to move to 1.0 within the next month because we need to give people a chance to upgrade. We don't want to ship immediately because we want to give people a little bit more time to do that upgrade and specifically to make sure that their certificates are valid. What we will do is measure uptake, and I'll show you how we're going to do that in a moment. And then at some point we'll say, okay, here's our migration date, and we'll just basically do it from 2 weeks from there, and that's when we'll ship 1.0. So we'll make as much noise as we possibly can about when Synapse 1.0 is coming out, and if there are any other server implementations that are also supporting that version of the spec, then we'll do it for that as well. So that's really the timescales. Let me show you the thing. So if this was live TV, this would be like a kind of telethon style thing, because Ben Parr has created for us the Matrix 1.0 Ready Federation-ometer. Oh, I think you can just about see that. And basically what this does is it looks at all of the home servers that we've interacted with via matrix.org in 2019. And it has a look at those and runs them through our federation tester. and tries to see how many we think are ready. Now, as you can probably see, we are currently sat at 50.5%. Ben assures me that this is not just a made-up number, but something that we're actually going to update. And so hopefully by the time you read this number, see this video, this number will be considerably higher. Now I should say this doesn't reflect the total number of users on the Federation, insofar as metrics.org can see it. Typically the largest server implementations are already there, so we're probably in the kind of mid to high 90s on that front. But in terms of actual servers, this is our number. We'd like it to be a bit bigger before we flip the switch and say 1.0. So that's it. Eric, why is 1.0 an exciting thing? Like, why should people care about this?
Well, because basically 1.0 is when we actually sort of say, hey, look, this is now usable. We fixed everything that we want to fix and done everything we want to done to probably call it 1.0. So this includes things like new room versions. Mm-hmm. So better state resolution algorithm just to make rooms a bit more stable when, like, especially large rooms, we have lots of servers coming and going offline and then coming back. You've probably heard about state resets and things like that. And just this new algorithm just makes things a little bit more intuitive. You don't have all the state rolling back. And yeah, just making it a little bit more stable. And yeah, pretty much. There's tons and tons of bug fixes and small features and various things that we've tidied up. So you want to upgrade to 0.99 soon, now, preferably in the past. And when 1.0 actually lands, then you really want to pull the switch and get all the nice new goodies of that, including new room versions. Yeah,
absolutely. I should say that website I just showed you is currently live at areweadyyet.com, which unbelievably was completely free.
Yeah, shockingly.
So lots of other people clearly don't know if they're ready yet on some other completely unrelated topic. But we have areweadyyet.com, and maybe we'll use it for a whole bunch of things in the future. That's a really cool domain.
Are we ready for a lunch yet?
Well, right,
exactly.
Right.
Like so many decisions like this, we could just use it for.
But again, we'll link this under the main thing, so you can go and have a look. And that also has a link to the Federation tester, so you can test your own home server as well. All right, if you have any questions about this stuff, Synapse is a great place to come and have a chat, or Matrix Dev if you want to talk more generally. And yeah, just let us know. Let us know if you're having any trouble. Eric, thank you so much for joining us today.
You. My pleasure.
Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week. I think it's going to be Ben next week. I think it's going to be Ben. He's got something cool.
Exciting surprise.
He's got some really cool stuff, and I hope it's going to be ready for next week. So hopefully that's what we'll have. All right, farewell. Bye bye.
See ya.